Hi guys. Welcome to Fall City. We're super excited. Oh gosh, we're pumped that you're here. Um, we're giving Adam a second, so I just got to address the awkward. It's how we do it here. All right, you guys can stand. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. He said talk, and I instantly panicked. All right, let's go.
That'll be the first time.
I know.
Nothing can separate, even if I run away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have your mercies for every day. Your love never fails.
Stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. When the strong and the water's deep, I'm never alone in these open seas. Your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your love never fails. All things work together for my good. 'Cause you made all things work together for my good. 'Cause you made all things work together for my good. 'Cause you made all things work together for my good. You made all things work together for my good. work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. Through the ages, your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your love never fails. Your love never fails.
All right, amen. Woo, yeah. Well, good morning. We're happy to see you here with us today. And if you're joining us online, we're happy that you're here with us that way too. Make sure to like, share. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And our website is fallcitychristian.com. So a couple announcements today. We want to thank Madison Maid for making all these fun little things. And I'm so awkward, Aaron. Yeah, and MPS, oh my gosh, printing for all the stuff they do for us. And then they actually sent us these nice thank you cards. Aaron left a note for them, like saying thank you, and then they gave us printed out thank you cards. So now we're super official, unlike me. I'm sorry. This is nerve-wracking. Okay, so today we are in Love is Selfless in our Tough Love series. So we're excited for the message we're going to hear today. Again, as always, if you're interested in reaching out, you want to get involved, or you have prayer requests or anything, please take advantage. If you want to connect as well, fill that teriyaki thingy and put it back there in the bin. This week, Fall City students, they went tubing at Perfect North, and I heard that was a super fun time. Let's give it up for Nick and Dawn for, making that happening. Yeah, and tons of other adult volunteers helped because it takes a village. But I heard it was a fun time. I heard that Doug got taken out by a tube. I don't know who did that, but he's not happy about it. No, but it was a really fun time, and we're really excited that we get to do fun things like that with our youth. So thank you to everybody that made that happen. And speaking of that, Fall City students meets this week from 6 to 7:30. Still, yes? I know last week it was moved up because of snow, but I think we're good this week. And then I think that's it, right? Am I missing anything? Good? All right. Well, with that, we're going to continue.
Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant through the trial and the change. One thing remains, this love thing remains. 'Cause your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love. On and on and on and on it goes. Overwhelmed, sad.
have a seat. You guys have a seat. We come to a time in our service that we want you guys to know that as a church, we give to the community. We feel like it is our responsibility, and it's a biblical responsibility that we give back. So that's exactly what we do. So we dedicate 10% of anything that we get here goes back out to the community in some way, shape, or form. So this is the time that if that's the way that you choose to worship, if that's the way that you choose to tithe, to give an offering, then we have baskets in the back, and you feel free to drop your tithes and offerings in there at your leisure. We also come to a time that we do every week is to the offering and of time to commune with our Savior. On July 20th of 1969, two men did what ultimately they still call the most amazing thing that humanity has ever accomplished. And as Buzz Aldrin and Lance Armstrong, Neil Armstrong. Woo! Tough up here. As Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong sat in their lunar module and rested because it was stressful to land on the moon. And as they sat there, Buzz Aldrin reached into his pack. He pulled out a vial of wine, a silver cup, and a wafer. He placed the wafer on his tongue. He poured the vial into the cup. And he took a drink. And he recited this verse. And Jesus said, I am the true vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me will have eternal life and will never want. Without me, without that abiding in me, you're nothing. This perspective with all eyes of the entire world on them at that time, Buzz Aldrin chose to point to God. He chose to give him the glory. And that's what we're asking to do. So as we commune, I want you to look into your heart, look into your perspective. Are you giving God the glory? Is he your Lord? Or are we just every day making accomplishments? This is our time. This is our time to look deep into our soul, look deep into our heart, and commune with our Savior. Father, we thank you. We thank you for the opportunity to just be in your presence. We thank you for allowing us to point to you. We thank you for giving us
God, I just thank you so much that your love for us is just unfathomable and that we can't even comprehend it, and how you love us even when we don't deserve it and we don't have to do anything to deserve it, that you just already love us. I just thank you for just how great you are, and I just ask that you'd be with us as a church, as a community. And I just ask that you'd be with Tim as he brings your message. It's in your beautiful name, Jesus, that we pray. Amen.
And all right, you guys can have a seat. Hear me all right? Yes? No? Thumbs up? Can I get an amen? Or a hallelujah? Or a boom shakalaka? Or something like that? Wasn't that awesome? You're going to have to forgive me. That's the first time in a while that I've been out of breath from drumming. I'd like to think it's because I was drumming hard, but I think it's just because I'm chunky. But we are in week 4 of a series called Tough Love. And this whole concept of tough love, it's not this being mean to somebody or tough on somebody in order to save them trouble in the long run. It has more to do with a love that is tough. I just stumbled. I promise I'm not drunk. It's way too early in the morning for that, right? Anyways, it's this love that can withstand the storms that life kind of throws at you. So not tough love, but a tough love, right? And so we've been busting apart since Thanksgiving. Valentine's Day, same difference, right? No. There's either a naked turkey or a half-naked baby involved. It's one of those two. All right, so since Valentine's Day, we've been busting apart this chapter in the Bible. That's 1 Corinthians 13. A lot of people call it the love chapter. You'll hear it at weddings, a lot of times involving marriage and stuff like that. People throw it in marriage counseling, all that. But actually, it's written to the church in Corinth. It's written to us. It's not necessarily romantic love, like bound chicka wow wow love. It's more like brotherly love. Right? It's more of this love that we're just supposed to have as good freaking human beings. And so let's jump into it. It's 1 Corinthians 13. It says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrong. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. It never loses faith. It's always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. And so that's a pretty powerful passage, especially considering that it's talking about humanity. It's not necessarily talking about a husband or a wife. It's talking about humanity, just how we're supposed to treat each other in general, right? And so those are some pretty powerful words to be in general. The first week we talked about the fact that love is patient, and we kind of brought ourselves into the upper room, and we saw that Jesus, at his most powerful point on this earth, he chose to be patient with his disciples, and he actually washed their feet. At that point when he could have given up, at that point when he could have dropped the hammer and just said, let's just call it all off, he chose to be patient. And that patient love ultimately led to the day of Pentecost, which led to the New Testament church, which is why you're here right now. Okay? Week 2, we dove into the fact that love is kind, and we saw Jesus in this chapter. We saw how he was generous and how he was kind to the people that he interacted with, and he was this guy who could heal sickness, who could raise the dead. Can you imagine how many people wanted a piece of that? How many people wanted to be healed? How many people wanted their problems fixed? And throughout all of this, he used what he had in order to better humankind. And then last week we talked about the fact that love is not rude. Despite what you think when you're arguing with your spouse, when you're arguing with somebody, love is not rude. We saw where Saul's insecurities and his jealousy caused him to focus on the wrong things. And when we focus on the wrong things, when we hold the wrong things high, then we're not right in our head. We're not right in our heart. And ultimately, these things made Saul the villain of the entire story, right? And so this week we're going to talk about love, and we're going to talk about the fact that love is selfless. And of all the people in this room who probably shouldn't be preaching this sermon right now, it's probably me. Can I get an amen? Amen. Yes. Just slow pitched that one to you, didn't I? Jerk. Anyways, You know that part, it's selfless, that part where it doesn't demand its own way or it doesn't keep records of being wronged. How many, now women, I know that you're notorious for this. Everything that a man does wrong is considered ammo thereafter, right? Can I get an amen on that? Guys? Okay, thank you. All right. It's not irritable. What it does is it simply thinks of the one loved, right? As opposed to oneself, we put the needs and the thoughts of the one loved over the lover. Now, I'm going to be honest. The sermon, whenever I started it at the beginning of the week, it was going to be a cakewalk because, the gospel is essentially the holy grail of selfless love sermons. But then I realized that I'm diving into some of that leading up to Easter, so I had to flip the script a little bit. And ADD kind of took over. And so we're going to jump into something that maybe you guys hadn't thought of before, but I think there is some selfless love diamonds to kind of mine from there. I wanted to say nuggets, but I figured you guys would laugh that I said selfless love nuggets. So anyways, because selfless love, what? Because selfless love is something that it takes thought, right? But then I got to thinking, I tend to head down these rabbit holes when I get to thinking, and these rabbit holes sometimes get me into trouble, but then sometimes I get some good stuff out of it. That being said, while a sermon about Jesus dying for us will never be out of style, I'm also working on the next series, basically unpacks that whole selfless love thing. Easter, right? The death, the burial, the resurrection of Jesus. At the same time, I was reminded of a story in the Old Testament that was kind of throwing some selfless love vibes at me. Don't ask me how, like what state of mind I'm in if the Bible's throwing selfless love vibes at me. But, and in this story, it's a few things that I'd always overlooked. Sometimes it's not necessarily exactly what you read, but if you put yourself in that moment, you think of some things that hit closer to home. And that's what happened to me. So we're going to head down that route. So hang on. This might get a little crazy, but look who your pastor is. So this is a small part of a very, very big story, a story that most people know or most people have heard of, a story that ultimately freed an entire nation from slavery. And so the name of this dude is Moses, all right? Moses, if you guys can think of like the all-stars of the Bible, Moses is going to be one of those guys, right? His people had been enslaved by the Egyptians, all right? This happened as a result of a change in leadership. And this leader didn't recognize who Joseph was because ultimately Joseph saved the Egyptians from a huge famine. So all the Egyptians probably would have starved to death had it not been for this Israelite. But then whenever the kingship or the pharaohship or whatever you call that, the leader changed, they didn't recognize like who saved them. And so the Pharaoh at the time, he decided that there were too many Israelites. And so they needed to control them. Otherwise, there were going to be so many of them that they could overthrow Egypt, and then it would flip the script. All of a sudden, the Egyptians would become the slaves, and the Israelites would be in charge. And so they made them make bricks and essentially build the city for them, and they kind of doubled their workload, if you will. This had actually been happening for about 400 years. Now, that's a long time. Like, I want you to think about how old our nation is. Was it around 250? Right? Is that how old we are? Yeah? Nobody? Okay. 400 years is a long time. I don't know what's so funny about that. But I want to put this in perspective. Just you guys chill out, okay? I want to put this in perspective. At the current calculation of what a generation is, which is roughly 25 years, their slavery lasted more than 16 generations. So if you have a kid and they have a kid, and then from there on, you got like 14 more grandbabies, right? Great. That's how long that lasted. Can you imagine the stories and the culture and the heartache and the work that came with that 400 years of slavery? 400 years of slavery. That's crazy. And then imagine being born into that. Like you would be born into a situation that was essentially hopeless. Right? But then, add on top of that, this tyrant leader decides that there are too many of you guys, so he murders all the male babies under 2. And guess what? You're a baby under 2. But then this happens, and this is where we're going to kind of pick up the story. And we're going to kind of unpack this selfless love thing, because I know you're thinking, how do you get a selfless love story out of a baby in a basket floating down a river? Well, watch me. Here we go. It says, about this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman, somehow, I don't know how, became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus, which happens to be my favorite font, made of papyrus reeds, and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. So she put the baby in the basket and laid it among the reeds and on the banks of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon, the Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. You want to know why I think they walked along the riverbank? I think because while she was taking a bath, they were going to put themselves in harm's way. So if a crocodile or something was going to eat somebody, it was going to be them and not her. That's why I think they were walking along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it for her. And when the princess opened it, she saw a baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse this baby for you? She asked. Yes, do, the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. Take this baby and nurse him for me, the princess told the baby's mother. I will pay you for your help. So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. Later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to the Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. The princess named him Moses, for she explained, I lifted him out of the water. Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. And during this visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. And we're going to stop there, because ultimately what happens is he steps in and he ends up killing an Egyptian. I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident, but he ends up killing an Egyptian. This kind of puts him on the no-fly list in Egypt. This story is one that's been told for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And as a kid, I always thought, well, how lucky was Moses, right? Out of all those kids, how lucky was Moses? Out of all these babies that were drowned in the Nile River, he was saved. Now, obviously, as I grew, as I got older, I know it was the hand of God. But back then, he was just another kid that got lucky, I guess. He was the one that got lucky. Of course, I focused a lot on the fact that he was God's chosen vessel to lead the Israelites out of slavery once I got older and into the promised land. But there's this part of the story. It's just a little blurb. Actually, some of it's not even there. So I got to put myself in the situation that grabbed a hold of me and got me thinking. What do you think it was like being a Hebrew kid, but growing up as Egyptian royalty? Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? I mean, if you look at the pictures, lots of gold, and there's pyramids, and there's people feeding you grapes, and they have the big palm leaves, and they're fanning you off. It sounds pretty awesome. It said that after the whole nursing thing was done, the princess adopted him as her own. And then it said many years later, when the boy had grown up, he went to the slums where the slaves were, right? So he spent many years in this palace, essentially as a prince, as the adopted son of the princess of Egypt, right? So there's a span of many years, according to the Bible, that Moses was Egyptian royalty. He was essentially the adopted grandson of the Pharaoh, the most powerful person in the known world at that point in time in history. That's probably a pretty good life, right? What do you think that would have been like? Servants everywhere? You would literally be carried around on one of those chair thingies with people carrying them. You know what I'm talking about? Like you got 4 big buff dudes, and they never wear shirts, carrying you through the streets of Egypt, right? You wouldn't even have to bathe yourself. People would bathe you. Back then, people bathed you. I know that's weird. You'd go to the finest parties and you'd eat the best food, the best cuts of steak, right? As the son of the princess of Egypt, you had the best horses, the best chariots. You'd have the best education. You'd be set up to take over a particular aspect of the kingdom at that point in time. You were set for life, like a lucky kid, right? What is? I'm not the problem here. You guys are. So let's think about this. Let's think about the fact that Moses was raised like this. Let's just say mom gave him back to the Pharaoh's daughter at 3 years old or so, and he took his little murder walk thing at 16, and so that's 13 years of living in luxury. Do you know how you could get used to living in the lap of luxury over 13 years, right? It doesn't take long to get into habits. It doesn't take long to have people do stuff for you, right? Not to mention the fact that at this time period, this is where he kind of develops his worldview, right? In those formidable years as a preteen and a teen. So what happened? Like, why would he turn his back on this? Why would he throw all this away in kind of a fit of rage? Well, I believe that it was for a love of humanity, this love of humanity that 1 Corinthians talked to us about. I believe it was a search for purpose. I mean, how long do you sit around and let people do stuff for you before you wonder, like, why am I even here? I believe it was curiosity for something that was bigger than him. Curiosity for something that was bigger than even Egypt. Like there was something going on inside of him. And so I boiled down a few things that we can kind of learn from this timeless story of freedom. The first thing is, regardless of how comfortable he was, Moses was born with a purpose. And we can say the same for you. You were born with a purpose. Now, I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that Moses was born with a purpose, right? He led Israel out of Egypt. He freed God's chosen people. That purpose was to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and into freedom. That was set into play even before he was born. Long before he was born, right? This series of events positioned him to be who he was created to be. And we look at our series of events, we look at the things that go on in our lives, and we just think that they're problems or they're circumstances or they're storms that we got to make it through. But have you thought about the fact that maybe this series of events positions you to be who it is you're created to be? That series of events was nothing that anybody could have planned for or anybody could have imagined, right? There is no one that would have looked down at their newborn baby and would have been like, oh, I can see it in your eyes. You see boo-boo. You're going to float down the Nile River and become a part of the people who have enslaved us, right? My little my little baby. You're going to murder a dude and spend several years in the desert. I just can't wait to watch you grow up. And then you're going to come back and make the Pharaoh's life a living hell. And you're going to make us live in the desert for 40 years. Oh, that's my baby boy. I'm so proud. Do you think that Moses' mom kind of knew that that's what was going to happen? I don't think so. She might have just thrown him in the river if she thought that's what was going to happen, right? I mean, seriously. Because they complained for like 40 years being in the desert. No, they just didn't want their baby to die. That's it. So the fact that he didn't, that was enough for them. They didn't need freedom. I mean, they didn't realize they wanted freedom. But that wasn't enough for Moses. It was enough for them, but it wasn't enough for Moses because Moses knew that he was built for something bigger than that. He knew that something was off. I'm sure he had a moment of reckoning where he said, this isn't right. I had the best cuts of steak and the best wine in the area last night for dinner, and my people are just trying to survive. Something was off for him. They're breaking their backs to build storehouses for the excess that the Egyptians have. And I'm literally being carried around by 4 dudes with their shirts off, and they have these hats that look like little golden cat wolf dog thingies on their heads. This is ridiculous, right? And so, just like a series of events sent him into the palace, now a series of events sends him to his purpose. And he sees a Hebrew man getting beat. And he steps in and diffuses the situation. I think that's what the mafia calls it. But he kills an Egyptian and says, you can't do that to my people. They're already going through enough. And this throws him into this place of desperation, something that he's never known before. He's never been desperate for anything up until this point. But the thing about it is desperation is where God does his best work, right? In our desperation, typically due to a series of events and circumstances, is where God does his best work. So Moses is perfectly positioned now. And so he's afraid that he's going to get busted for killing this Egyptian guy who he's buried in the sand. Once again, another cool movie scene, I think. And he's met with the purpose for his purpose now, right? He's hiding. He retreats into the desert. And then here we go where he's met with his purpose for his purpose. One day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law. So a lot of things have gone on since. He retreated to the desert. He was saved by some shepherds. And now he has a father-in-law, which means he has a wife, right? His father-in-law name is Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock far into the wilderness. And he came to Sinai and the mountains of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire in the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't this bush burning up? I must go see it. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, Moses, Moses, here I am, Moses replied. Don't come any closer, the Lord warned him. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And when Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I've certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I'm aware of their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt and into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey. The land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me. and I've seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people, Israel, out of Egypt. Now, the poor guy's already been through enough, right? Adopted, living in a palace. He kills a dude. Now he's been out in the desert. He flees to the desert. He's rescued by some shepherds. He meets Jethro. He marries his daughter. He builds himself a pretty nice life as a shepherd. He's got a family, a job, responsibility. And then he's out doing his thing, and he runs into this burning bush. Then guess where he is? Right back in the same position he was when he was in Egypt. A moment where God nudges him and says, you've got a choice to make. You can either stay here and be comfortable, or you can step into the calling of your purpose of something that is greater than who you are and what you're doing currently. Do I leave this? Do I leave my new life? It was already enough trouble to leave my old one to rescue a group of people who won't even really accept me. And to fight a group of people who want to kill me already? Do I leave this? Do I leave my family? Do I leave the comfort? Do I leave security? To go and do this greater purpose that I've been called to? So he's got to do something that's hard for all of us to do. What he did is he looked outside of his bubble, right? We all have our bubble. We all have the things that directly impact our life. And if we can't look beyond that, then we normally just act out of selfishness, right? It's just about us and our comfort and how it affects us. This is the first step to selflessness, is looking outside of your bubble. You got to look outside of yourself. And when he did, he was reminded of a nation of people who were worked to the bone. For what? Really for the Pharaoh's pride. So he can have bigger stuff, bigger toys, right? He also, even beyond that, I believe this was a really big thing that drove him. He also saw a future for his people. A future of freedom, a future of abundance. But you know what that's going to cost him? His current freedom and his current abundance. And so he's got to trade that, right? Because he had a flock of sheep. He was living in a peaceful place with a family that loved him well. He had food on the table. He had clothes on his back. And you know what it's going to cost him to go back to Egypt? That. Once again, Moses has it made. He's got this community that he belongs to. He's got a family that he belongs to. He literally has flocks of animals. He's got abundance. And so for a second time, he leaves his abundance so that others can have freedom. There's something bigger, a selflessness that's going on inside of this man right now. His bubble was comfortable. His bubble was safe. His bubble was stable. And he made the move to create that for others. So armed with this promise from God, it says this later on in this story. It says, but I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I'll raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. Then at last he will let you go. And I will cause the Egyptians to look favorably upon you. Well, that's not what he was expecting, right? They'll give you gifts. And when you go, you will not leave empty-handed. Every Israelite woman will ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbors and from the foreign women in their houses. You will dress your sons and daughters with these, stripping the Egyptians of their wealth. Like, that's way more than probably what he even imagined. He leaves the comfort of his family farm and he takes his family back to Egypt to be a source of hope and freedom for people who have not tasted either of those, freedom or hope, for 16 generations. Selflessness is oftentimes stepping outside of your bubble in order to help others who have no idea what it's like to even have their bubble. Right? This oftentimes throws us into a place of desperation that God works so well with. The problem is we don't typically even entertain the thought of placing ourselves in those situations. We don't even entertain the thought of looking beyond our bubble. A lot of times we got our head down and we are taking care of us. And if we can't take care of us, we can't take care of anybody. But Moses did not think that same way. And so what we do is we just chill in our own bubble. Moses' decision to step into desperation positioned him to be someone that he was always supposed to be, that was set into place before he was even born. And because he was willing to do that, he was able to do what no one else would or could do. Imagine being that person. Imagine being the person that could do what no one else could or would do. But you couldn't get there until you stepped out of your bubble. These moments, these situations, these circumstances that are all wove together to position Moses to do things that no one else could or would do. Think about it. The current Pharaoh was probably his uncle or perhaps a cousin, maybe even a stepbrother. But whoever it was, they knew who Moses was. They knew that he'd killed an Egyptian. There's no other Israelite that would be able to get a meeting with the Pharaoh except for Moses, right? Because all the rest of them were just slaves. But Moses wasn't. He was probably infamous. He was probably that guy that we brought in, made a part of our family, and how does he repay us? He turns around and kills one of our people, right? That's kind of what his thing was. This man now has the power of God guiding his every step, and he has access to the Pharaoh that are a byproduct of all of these moments, all these circumstances, all these scenarios, all these situations that have built up leading up to this. The one Israelite that could get his face in front of Pharaoh was Moses. But it only happened because of everything that led up to that point. So Moses abandons his comfort and he heads to the palace. And he's met with some opposition. When he says, let my people go, the Pharaoh says, nah, we ain't doing that work. Somebody's got to do that work. I got people that carry me around. You actually think I'm going to build a storehouse for my excess? No. But several plagues later, we get to the moment that made it all worth it. The moment that from the second that baby was dropped into that river was building up to this point. It says, the Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron during the night. Get out, he ordered. Leave my people and take the rest of the Israelites with you. Go and worship the Lord as you've requested. Take your flocks and herds, and as you said, and be gone. Go. But please bless me as you leave. All the Egyptians urged the people of Israel to get out of their land as quickly as possible, for they thought, we will all die. The Israelites took their bread dough before yeast was added. They wrapped their kneading boards in their cloaks, and they carried them on their shoulders. And the people of Israel did as Moses had instructed. They asked the Egyptians for clothing and articles of silver and gold. The Lord caused the Egyptians to look favorably on the Israelites. And they gave the Israelites whatever they asked for, so they stripped the Egyptians of all their wealth. Those moments, stepping out of his comfort and looking beyond his bubble, culminates to this. And eventually, they would go and walk through the Red Sea. And they would walk into the wilderness. And they would have some issues along the way. All right? But the nation of Israel saw everything that God had promised. And many, 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 many generations later, they saw even greater things, right? I want you to think about this. If Moses had been selfish, I would not have preached a sermon about Saul last week. Because that was the bloodline of what walked through the Red Sea and out of Egypt. We would not be talking about the Apostle Paul. We would not talk about David. And if that doesn't hit close enough to home, if Moses was selfish, we wouldn't have Happy Gilmore, right? We wouldn't have Adam Sandler. Now, if Saul doesn't hit you close to home, Adam Sandler hits me close to home. No Waterboy, no Happy Gilmore, no Billy Madison, right? But more importantly, if Saul had been selfish, what would it have looked like? Would the Israelites have been able to taste salvation through Jesus? Because the bloodline of Jesus walked out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, into the wilderness, and many, 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 many generations later, died on the cross for us. So that we could beat sin and hell and death. How different would this story have played out if teenage Moses was like, nah, I'm good. I got mines, right? I'm good. Like, I got a good thing going on here. I don't even have to brush my own teeth. Somebody brushes my teeth for me, right? I have people who do that. Why would I mess that up? Why would I step out there with those people and get into a fight? Why would I leave and go into the middle of the freaking desert somewhere? Why would I leave my comfortable living there and come back to the place where people want to kill me? Why would I pick a fight with the most powerful person in the world at that time? Why would I lead a bunch of ungrateful people into the wilderness who are just going to build a golden calf and screw it up time and time again? Nah, I'm good. What would have happened if Moses would have done that? But he didn't. And he couldn't do that, right? Because out of his selfless love for humanity at that time, he knew he was born on purpose. He knew that he had greater things attached to who he was. He looked outside of his bubble. It wasn't just about him, because if it had just been about him, he probably would have remained in Egypt as a royal. But it was about more than just him. And that positioned him to do what no one else could do, or no one else would do. That only happens when love draws us away from selfishness. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been married for 18 years. I know that there are selfish moments in love, but those moments need to be uncharacteristic of the relationship. Like, you should be able to tell that something's wrong when you're being selfish or when the other person's being selfish, right? Because love should draw us away from selfishness. I pray that we can be that to this world. Because it's not just about husband and wife. It's about us loving the world as God commanded us to, right? Not selfishly, but selflessly. I drew that out. I drew that F out way too long. But that only happens. That only happens if we understand that there's a greater purpose for our life, that we were built on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose, right? And that only happens if we look and step outside of our bubble, that comfort trap that is our bubble, right? And then that positions us to be and do what no one else can be or do in somebody's life or several people's lives, right? So my prayer, Fall City, is that we can be that to a world that desperately needs a selfless love. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for this day of life. I thank you for the opportunity just to be here. The fact that we can be here speaks to your selfless love. The fact that we have a reason to sing, that we have a reason to gather, that we have a reason to be together, it speaks to your selfless love. Lord, I pray that we can tap into that and we can find a greater purpose. A purpose that is so grand, that is so audacious, that it causes us to step outside of our bubble. It causes us to step outside of our comfort zone. And in that, positioning us to do what no one else can do. Father, we thank you for moments like that. We thank you for stories, for moments inside of Bible accounts that we can unpack and see how you're at work in every little thing. Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you for the freedom that you have given us to be who it is that you have called us to be. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
You guys can go ahead and stand.
All right. Well, thanks for being here with us this morning, and we will see you next Sunday. Have a great week.